Okay, we are now recording. I'd like to call to order SFSS Exec Committee meeting on Friday, December 1st, 2023 at 2:33 p.m. Starting off with a territorial acknowledgement, we respectfully acknowledge that the SFSS is located on the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, and Katzie nations. Unceded means these territories have never been handed over, sold, or given up by these nations and were currently situated on occupied territories. We can now begin roll call, starting with myself. I'm here. Access needs are just fine. And then it will be acting VP internal.
Hi, Ashley here. They should be. Oh, can you not hear me?
Not quite.
This is better. Hi, Ashley. They should be pronouns. All my access needs are met for today.
Thank you. VP Finance does not look present. VP UAA mentions that he will be late. And then it's VP External.
Hi, my name is Nancy. My pronouns are she, her, and all my access needs are met.
Very nice. VP Equity also mentions that she will be behind. VP Events. VP Events. IO. IO is a bit shy at the moment. Now for society staff, starting off with the temporary operations organizer.
Sindhu here, pronouns she, her, hers, access needs are met.
Very nice, thank you. Policy, research, community affairs does not look to be here. What about admin assistants? In the chat, thank you very much. Moving on to consent agenda. Be it resolved to adopt the consent agenda by unanimous consent. Seeking unanimous consent. I'm receiving no dissent. This carries unanimously. I will share what is on my screen for the sake of convenience. Very nice. We are currently on adoption of the agenda. I move. Would anyone care to second?
Events.
I hear events seconds. Be it resolved to adopt the agenda as presented. Do we have any amendments? Ashley has a list.
Yeah, I'm going to make an amendment. Just give me 2 seconds to find the document. It seems someone else has already highlighted them, so perhaps other people already amended on the 2 in-camera items to amend on for today. Either way, I would like to amend on the following 2 in-cameras. I move to amend on an in-camera item titled Club Event and another in-camera titled Event Logistics.
Very nice. Do we have a seconder?
External.
I hear external seconds seeking unanimous consent. Receiving no dissent. This adoption is added on. Do we have any further amendments? I will take the silence as a no. Be it resolved to adopt the agenda as amended. Seeking unanimous consents. Receiving. I think Thomas had stuff. Yes, you're right. Thomas did mention that he had some things, but he wants them because he's not here. He says might as well push them to next exec meeting. Once again, looking for unanimous consent. Receiving no dissent. Agenda passes. Thank you very much. We start out with our first new business item. This was one thing submitted by Thomas. I move. Anyone care to second?
External.
I hear external seconds, whereas the current vice chair of the council works closely with the current exec team. Be it resolved to provide the current vice chair of council, which is Sam Killowy, the Molecular Biology and Biochemistry Student Union Council representative with an access fob to enter the SFSS exec lounge at any given time. This seems pretty standard and straightforward. I think I will go straight to seeking unanimous consent. Ashley, you have a list.
Yeah, sorry to just be nitpicky about this, but what does it mean by at any given time, considering the fact that non-executive counselors are not allowed to be in the building past 10? I was wondering if we should clear up the language on that particular be it resolved clause, or if Sindhu thinks that's fine, then we don't have to worry about it.
Nancy, you have a list?
Actually, I'll let Sindhu go first.
Thank you. Sindhu, you have a list?
Yeah, I think actually that's a good point. Because then this technically could give this person access that's different from the execs if execs were restricted. So I think we could say something along the lines of similar to AVPs, with similar access to AVPs or something along those lines, or within sub hours. Any clarification there would help.
We could also just amend it to say at any time when the sub is opened. So access fob to enter the sub building. No, the SFSS exec lounge during the sub opening hours. I feel like that shouldn't be that bad. Nancy, you're next on the list.
I just kind of wanted to like just also kind of put in the idea of just having it worded as like the same as AVPs, because AVPs have access during working hours to just the office door. And then we still have the bylaw where if Sam is needed for something, like an exec needs Sam after hours, he's still allowed to stay. So if we just change it to like the same as AVPs, I think that would cover everything, because that's kind of how they work. They'll only have access during our working hours and stuff.
Okay. So what's the specific wording we should amend it to? Yes, Ashley.
Yeah, I'll move to change the last bit of the be it resolved clause to, instead of reading with an access fob to enter the SFSS executive lounge at any given time, to strike at any given time and replace it with I'm not sure here. Hold on.
Sub working hours.
Yeah, let's say during sub working hours, comma, the same as AVP access.
The same as AVP. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Right. I second. Seeking unanimous consent. No dissent. So now I'm seeking unanimous consent to pass the motion as amended. Once again, I'm receiving no dissent. I'll presume that this motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 8.2 is the club proposal appeal, also submitted by Thomas. I move. Would anyone care to second?
External.
I hear external seconds. Whereas the SFSS club approval terms of reference states that club proposals are reviewed and approved at the discretion of member services club coordinators and or the SFSS exec committee and council, whereas a student requested the VPUAA for a chance to appeal a denied club approval request, be it resolved that the executive committee discuss and approve the club proposal for an SFU Mahjong club. There must be discussion for this one. Now's the time for lists. This looks like Nancy has the first list.
Mine I probably shouldn't have been counted as a list. I just kind of have like a few questions for whoever can answer them. Do we know why they were denied? And also, these type of things go through IO, or am I just a bit confused? Those are my two questions there.
They go through the member services club coordinators, but Samantha's in the meeting. Samantha, would you like to change your list to a direct response? For Nancy's questions,
I guess I can give a quick backstory of this. So I was the one who initially, so the club coordinators and I always sit down together and we go through all the club proposals and we decide whether or not the clubs are approved. So I was given the, I guess the job to reject this club proposal because it goes against our club's approval terms of reference. So I don't know if you guys know the game of Mahjong, but it's closely related to like gambling, essentially. And well, I mean, that's the student did appeal the process and say that like he did claim that UBC has a Mahjong club, but again, SFU, SFSS, we are a completely different, separate institution from UBC. So it does not mean that if UBC has a Mahjong club, that SFU, SFSS has to have a Mahjong club as well. And does everyone know the game of Mahjong? Just want to ask.
I know it.
Yes. The student did claim that they aren't going to be using like money, so there isn't a form of like transaction for gambling. But I think, in my opinion, for someone who plays this game, it's the idea that surrounds the game it's the connotation of gambling that is deeply rooted in the game. And it's like poker. We also don't have a poker club because, again, poker is deeply rooted in gambling. And in my opinion, anything you can find at a casino, so that's poker, mahjong, roulette, baccarat, any of those games, if you can find it at a casino, it's directly tied with gambling, and this goes against our club approval terms of reference. This was back in May, so I don't know why it's being brought up again. But I think given all of these points, the club coordinators are still in agreement that this club should not be approved.
I see. Aya, it is now your turn to list. Aya.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It took a while. Okay, so Thomas did talk to me about this, and I do have my reservations about us being the final ground about for which this is going to go through. I do kind of see where he comes from, because I do feel that we have a number of clubs who could realistically branch off into other things that go against our issues policies as well as our other policies. And in this case, I kind of see where the complaint of those clubs weren't shall I say, they weren't turned against or they weren't rejected, but this one is. And it was a weird thing but the way Thomas explained it was basically that they would just avoid any form of gambling and such. And the perspective I'm taking as it starts right now would be to let the club exist, and there will be reviews of the club's activities. And if they do go against the policies, then they could be hit with the warnings before they are shut down as it's practice. Because I feel like the idea that if it was a direct gambling club, I'd understand. But I feel that there are some clubs, like not necessarily some clubs that will go into things that are against our policies, but clubs that have the ability to do so. As we do have various clubs that have to do with various movements, and depending on what movement does become the norm, they might go against what we hold in our issues policies, what we hold in our regular policies. And I just feel that if those clubs are allowed the chance to exist, even with that as a potential risk, we should be more lenient towards establishing various clubs. I don't necessarily believe that this club has to or doesn't have to exist, but my take on it more or less is just that if they haven't defaulted yet, I don't think it's fair to go with the idea that they are going to default.
Ashley, you were retracted a few times. Would you like a turn to speak?
I do have a list, although I did
All right.
retract my DR. Um, I was originally going to ask Io if you could give an example of the kind of club you were talking about, which we goes against our issues policy, yet we allow anyways. But I think I have a general idea what you're getting at, so I won't press you too hard on that. Instead, what I'll say is I think we should take the opposite approach in that if we have clubs which go against our issues policies or whatever, we should get rid of those instead of adding more clubs that potentially might be bending the rules a little. I'm not necessarily gonna say that we need to follow like, to a T. Like for instance, like we said, the issues policy is against gambling, not the game specifically. So perhaps there's some leeway about allowing this club to exist. But it seems like this game is very tied to gambling, and that, like we said, we don't have, say, a poker club or an equivalent to justify a precedent for this particular bending of our issues policy. So I would be inclined to take staff's opinions on this more seriously than perhaps we have been, and not allow this club to exist because it goes against our policies in that sense. There was a reason it was denied, and I think it would be bad, for lack of a better term, to just kind of uproot our policy in that sense simply because we want to, or the student specifically asked for it. This is a gambling club, and I don't think we should allow it.
I always see a direct response.
Okay, first of all, I completely agree with the fact that we should be giving our staff like this a proper say in these matters. But second of all, the club, its actions do not directly violate any of our policies. Again, it's a game that can be played without gambling. And because, for example, I played poker for about 2 years before I got here, and I never put money on it once. So I'm saying that these games can exist without gambling. Obviously, there's the question of why make a club about it if they can just play with each other. I feel that would be a question that would probably be best for whoever's trying to establish the club to answer in the first place. All I'm saying is we are currently approaching this not as it currently violates our policy, but more as it could potentially violate our policy. And that was why I brought up the other clubs things. I don't believe that there are currently any clubs, or I don't believe that there will be many clubs that are currently violating any of our current policies. I just believe that there is a chance. I'm just saying that for a lot of clubs, especially any that has to do with ethnical backgrounds or anything that has to do with any political issues that have the tendency or the possibility of violating our policies. But they still exist because they haven't violated those policies yet. And I just feel that we should approach this with the same mindset that if we approach establishing clubs with the idea of they could violate our policies, probably, and there's a good chance of it. No, from what Samantha explained, they explained that they weren't going to gamble, and she said that it's a game that's tied to gambling, like poker. And I just explained that I've played poker in the past multiple times without gambling, which is why I'm saying that as it stands, they do not seem to currently violate policy. Now, that's still a decision I want to be left up to the club coordinators, but I do believe that we shouldn't be approaching this kind of stuff with the idea of they could violate policy, because that's what it feels like we're doing here. And that's just basically how I see it.
Samantha, I see a direct response.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, that yes, it can be tied to gambling, but at the same time, you're opening up a can of worms here. The moment you approve the Mahjong club, the poker club will also be approved on the same basis, that we're just going to trust that these students will not play with money and that this game is not going to be tied with gambling. You're setting a precedent right there. Right? And are the club coordinators now in charge of policing these kids, going to all of their events and making sure that they're not gambling in any sort of way?
Nancy. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm done.
I see. Nancy, you have a list.
Yeah. Sorry. So I kind of have at the like end my decisions kind of the same as Io's, but for like kind of like a different reason. So I've played Mahjong like before without gambling, and I know there's like different variations in how to play, and I understand its connection with gambling and how that's going to create precedent. And I completely agree with that, that how that might open up a different kind of worms. But I think like the difference with this club and maybe the poker club is that yeah, you can play poker without gambling, but it kind of defeats the whole purpose, at least for how people play poker here. It doesn't really seem like people would play poker without gambling. It kind of like loses its edge, but I've seen people play mahjong games without gambling and it still has that same, you know, the same vibe that it kind of has with or without it. And like I'm okay with either or, like still keeping this club like as like not starting or started up, because I do think that there is a lot of ways that you can play this game without gambling. And I think because it's tied to gambling, like it is a bit of a gray area. And I think that's something that we need to look into. Yes, it creates a precedent, but not the precedent that I think that we think that it's going to create. Like if the poker club comes up and someone wants to make a poker club, well, that's a lot easier to like kind of tie to gambling. Like I understand that a bit more. I definitely think it's a conversation that we can still have, but if people are a bit split on it, like we can still like keep this as like it's not happening for now, but I don't see the long-term harm in it yet. Yeah.
Keep track of the. I believe Sindhu, you are the next one on the list.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, as Sam said, there has been a poker club proposal, and I mean, to say if we did approve this club, who's to say on the exception basis, who's to say the next set of execs don't approve all of the other groups being like, hey, like, well, we don't know what the exception was. It looks like previous groups approved this club, so we're going to continue to approve all of these other clubs. And it's much harder to remove a club than it is to approve. And I think the staff who have been working on this have been working here for years and have seen implications of approving clubs or being unable to audit clubs, or then catching them in certain circumstances, or having externals then reach out to us because groups have gotten in difficulties or challenges, and then now we're responsible. So I also think, and Samantha, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Samantha has told this group multiple times to redo their proposals, like, and has coached them through opportunities of how this club could work. And this is still the kind of proposal that they brought forward. So I don't think there was any point where Samantha wasn't working with them to make this a viable club either. So I think on that basis too, I'm more in favor of rejecting this unless they come back with a different type of proposal. And Samantha, I don't know if you have more insights on that, but I'm pretty sure you did work with them and tell them to provide a different type of proposal for this, right?
I did not. I suggested that we do have a lot of other board game clubs or card games related clubs that they could be interested in joining. And I suggested that instead of starting a club that could potentially and is connected to gambling, which goes against our club approval terms of reference.
Bianca, it looks like you have the next list.
Hi, yeah, I'm very sorry I'm stepping into this conversation midway. But if anyone would be able to give me a quick recap of the concerns with this club, that would be, and the discussion thus far, that would be very much appreciated.
Nancy, it looks like you have a direct response.
I'll just quickly fill you in there, Priyanka. If anyone else wants to jump in, please do. So we're talking about the Mahjong Club. I'm not sure if Thomas has talked to you about it yet. We got a proposal for it. It was rejected on the basis that it has very close ties to gambling. It's a game that you can find in casinos and stuff. So it's tied with gambling, and because of that, it goes against our bylaws. But Thomas brought it forth to see if maybe we can discuss and approve the club. IO is presenting the idea that you can have the club, but we would just have to monitor them to make sure they're not gambling and things like that. But then that raises the concern of setting a precedent for other clubs that want to have games that are similar to gambling that want to join. And then I think the rest of it you kind of came in during.
Priyanka, direct response.
Okay, thank you for the recap. So in terms of, I guess I know Sindhu mentioned that like if there's issues, they may come back to us, and then we have to kind of monitor them for gambling concerns. Can we not have them sign a like contract with us, kind of saying like, hey, like we recognize that like that's just will not like it's not for gambling, we do not promote it, and you're not allowed like condoning it in your club. So if we do get any whiff of that happening or any issues related to that, it gives us the right to terminate. Because while I understand the concerns with the association to gambling, I also want to recognize that we are kind of here to foster student interest. And if this is something that like a student is interested in, like, hey, like I want to play Mahjong, but like I don't want to go to casino, I don't want to gamble, but this is something me and my friends are interested in, like I also want to provide a safe space for them to do so, which I think is kind of our role. Once again, like I might have missed key points of the discussion. I'm very sorry if I am missing past context, but just from what I stepped in on, that's where I'm at so far. Like I'm not totally opposed to this. I haven't seen the exact proposal as well, so I'm not sure if there was major concerns with that, but like I do want to provide a space where students can engage in their interests, and like we can provide, if we can provide that space for them, I want to do so.
Ashley, you still have your list.
I do. This seems to be a controversial opinion at this point, but I'm inclined to trust staff's expertise. And until staff gives us the recommendation to approve this club as an exception, I think we should reject them until they come back with a better proposal or whatever. Yeah, I'm going to take staff's word on this entirely. If they think it violates our issues policy or whatever kind of policy it's violating here, yeah, there's a reason we have member services staff in charge of this stuff. It's because they've been doing it for so long and they know the policy better than we do. They know the ramifications that will happen if we approve a club that is ambiguous within our policy. I would be open to hearing this again if they come to a better proposal or one that is more explicitly not tied to gambling. That's an option, but yeah, I'm voting against this motion.
See, Samantha, you have a direct response after this. I'd like to cut off the lists.
I think I'd just like to preface that space will also be an issue. We don't know what SFU's stance is on having this club, whether or not their activities will be approved. So their space will only be limited to the sub if SFU says that they don't want this club to be in any of their space. So that's going to be another issue, right? That is raised. The club, I can already foresee the club coming back to us, the people that are on the front line saying, why can't we get a club, or why can't we have a room in the AQ? And then there are no rooms in the sub for them to be booked. And then they're going to be coming back at us and they say they can't have their events. Okay, that's one issue. Sorry, Ashley said something and I totally thought it was a great, a good comment, but I forgot what you said. But, oh, right. So this conversation that I had with this student was back in May. Okay, he did understand where I was coming from, and he did accept the fact that I rejected his proposal. I don't know why this is being brought up again, but he did understand that his proposal was rejected. So I think we gotta bring it back to that.
Understood. All right. Priyanka, this list I will allow. After that, discussion's cut off for real.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Once again, I'm so sorry, everyone. I know I stepped in late. I'm probably missing context. And I do trust that like our staff have been around longer. They know more about our bylaws and policies. But I'm trying to finally Google like other universities as well. It seems that UVic has a poker club, and so does UBC. So if there is a way we can work with them to make that happen, I wouldn't be opposed to this, but like I still feel like I'm missing a lot of context personally. And on the point Samantha's mentioned, that the fact that this is kind of coming up now after he accepted her response that like this was impossible is a bit odd. It seems like I think Thomas submitted this proposal, or I think so. Yeah, VPUA. Is it possible that we just postpone this, and because Thomas isn't here today, so he can kind of attest to give us more context on this as well? And then I would also, I guess, like appreciate more of a debrief, maybe Samantha or something, someone after, about like the potential repercussions with this. Just, yeah, I guess that's where I'm at right now. Thank you.
That's fair. You do raise a fair point. This was submitted by Thomas. Ideally, Thomas would be here to mention a few pointers on this, especially why it's being brought up again now. He's not here. That's a shame. He's stuck in traffic. He's not going to be here for a while. On that note, I'd like to move to postpone this motion to the next exec committee meeting. Hopefully he will be there at that time, and then we can rediscuss it then. I'm looking for a seconder for this one.
External.
Equity seconds.
I heard external seconds. I'm going to be seeking unanimous consent. I am receiving no dissent. To be clear, then I'm going to be declaring item 8.2, this club proposal appeal, to be postponed to the next exec committee meeting. Oh, Samantha, you have a list.
If you are wanting to talk about the club proposal, feel free to come find Ricky, Nancy, and I. We're always in office. You can always just send us a chat or send us an email. We're happy to explain why we rejected this proposal. And that's for other things as well. Like instead of just bringing it to the committee, having a little more context would be helpful. And we're always open to discussion about things. I think that's just my last comment here.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. We're now moving on to item 8.3, AVP appointment. This is by Thomas. Sadly, he's not here for this one. However, this one looks pretty straightforward. We should be able to get by. I move. Anyone care to second?
External.
All right, I hear external second. So whereas under R17 of the council policies, nominations for the position of associate vice president shall be ratified subject to approval by the executive committee by a majority vote. Whereas Sharon Alam is nominated to be associate vice president university and academic affairs for the remainder of the 2023 to 2024 council year, be it resolved to nominate Sharon Alam to be associate vice president university and academic affairs for the remainder of the 2023 to 2024 council year. Do we have any discussion? Ashley, it looks like you have a list.
Yeah, I hate to be that girl, but how many AVPs does Thomas have? Does anyone know an answer to that question?
That's a good question.
And the reason I ask this is because there's past precedent setting a maximum of 4. So my concern would be, I believe this is his 5th, unless I'm miscounting. Yeah.
There are two direct responses. Nancy, you get the first one.
I'm just gonna go ahead and say this. I think you're probably gonna say the same thing, but I think this would be his fourth or his third. He has two that I know for sure. One of them is kind of iffy. I don't remember if he's Thomas's AVP or Priyanka's AVP. I think it might be Thomas's, but I think this is either his third or fourth, but he is in the limit, I believe.
Mhm. Do you still have a direct response?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sorry. I'm kind of on the side of that's a lot of AVPs, especially considering how many concessions we're making for AVPs, especially this year, in regards to all the fobs and in regards to the fobs entry and all that. I don't know. It just feels like it's too much. And I'm also just wondering what he needs all the AVPs for. And also, I kind of wish he was here to kind of explain why he has so many AVPs, especially since he tends to do most of his projects by himself. So yeah.
Zindu, your direct response.
I'll retract it. I wrote it in. This would be his fifth. If
I
we
see.
approve.
Ashley, do you have a direct response?
I do. Since this is his fifth, I was under the impression when I direct responded, we were told it was less than that. But either way, while there's precedent for 4 being a max, that's already a lot. I would be under the opinion that even 2 should be the maximum. And in fact, me and Sinu have been in talks about implementing some more concrete rules around AVPs, precisely because this exec team has so many, and it is unclear exactly what all these AVPs are doing and contributing to. I would want Thomas here to justify a 5th AVP. Heck, I'd want him to justify a 3rd and 4th AVP. That exec office is getting real crowded and real messy. I'm inclined to either postpone this until Thomas can be here to justify it, or reject it outright. Yeah.
I have a question. Do we have a hard set limit on the amount of AVPs you can have? Or are they just expectations? Sinju?
I couldn't find the exact policy on this, but Ashley, as Ashley mentioned, I think this came up last year because an exec had more than 4 and it became an issue. So my recommendation would be to postpone this one as well, because that would give us time to see what the guidelines around this are. And it would give Thomas the opportunity to be here to speak on it as well.
Very nice. Nancy, you have a list? Retracts, very nice. I'd like to move to postpone item 8.3 to the next exec meeting. Thomas can be here to justify it. Most likely he's aware of the situation as well with a bunch of AVPs. Chances are he might have his own justification for it. Looking for a seconder.
External.
I hear external seconds. I'm seeking unanimous consent. While I'm receiving no dissent, we can consider 8.3 postponed to next exec meeting. Item 8.4, sub 1330 room allocation, submitted by Thomas. I move. Anyone care to second?
External.
Equity.
I hear external seconds, whereas the SFSS president and VPUAA have worked with the Faculty of Applied Science, DSUs, and design teams to allocate room 1330 as a space for the design team usage, whereas the SFSS president and the VPUAA have worked to draft both the sub 1330 MOU and sub 1330 guidelines. Be it resolved that the SFSS Exec Committee approves the sub 1330 MOU and sub 1330 guidelines. I'm expecting some discussion, but right off the bat, I'd like to move to postpone this one as well. The MOU was supposed to be set on the basis that there's going to be a student union backing it up. Apparently, we can't even have that. Thomas is not here. It looks like a fast student union will not be happening, and if that's not going to be happening, we don't have legitimate grounds to set up an MOU. I'm going to meet back with the DSUs to see if we can re-implement a fast student union, and then we can reapproach the subject from there. But as it currently stands, there's not a whole lot of stuff to talk about for 8.4, all in all. FS, I'm assuming that's fast SU is crucial. Well, yes, that is the main idea. I have not looked for a seconder yet. I'm looking for a seconder.
External.
I hear external seconds. I'm seeking unanimous consent. While I'm receiving no dissent, we can consider 8.4 to be postponed as well. This has been a very productive meeting. Aha! Moving in camera time. Item 10. I'd like to move into camera for the remainder of the meeting. May I
Internal.
get a seconder?
Internal.
I heard internal seconds. Seeking unanimous consent. I'm receiving no dissent. Allow me to pause the recording. Recording is resumed. I'd like to move to go X camera for the remainder of the meeting. May I get a seconder?
External.
I briefly heard events. Event seconds, be it resolved to go X camera for the remainder of this meeting. Seeking unanimous consent. Receiving no dissent. Carried unanimously. I would now like to move on to adjournment. I move. Would anyone like to second?
Equity.
I hear equity seconds. Thank you so much. Be it resolved to adjourn this meeting at 3:35 p.m. I'm seeking unanimous consent. Receiving no dissent. Allow me to stop sharing the screen and stop the